This last video on strings is just a little bit of a reminder for some of you on how strings work. So it says, predict what the following will do. We're going to run some of this code just to see what it does. Make sure you really know how strings do what it concatenate, which means they add together, and how they repeat if we multiply, and make sure that you really understand that. So as you start coding your own programs, you just understand how string output will actually work altogether. So here we have Unit 5, Lesson 2. I called it Concatenation and Repetition. And all I'm going to do here is remind you of what we already know about string variables. So we have Unit 5, Lesson 2, do concatenation and repetition. And we're just going to experiment with adding and multiplying strings. So here it says, predict what the following will do. Hopefully you already have a pretty solid understanding of what this code is going to do. I'm just going to type it in quick and then we'll summarize what it's actually going to do. But you should be thinking through, okay, if I see 6 strings, they're each a string, you can easily see that, or 5 strings, excuse me. If I see 5 strings, and then string 6 is string 1 plus string 2 plus string 3 plus string 4 plus string 5, you should have a good guess of what this is going to do. Then we're going to print, we'll do string 6 to the screen. So hopefully you're already thinking this is going to smush them all together, because the plus sign is called concatenation, and unlike the comma, the plus sign just smushes everything together. So when we have a plus sign that's called concatenation, it's the addition of strings. It just takes all of the strings, strings them together, and doesn't add any space in between. So this is when we add strings. And notice when we add strings, everything gets smushed together, and there's no spaces added in between. Now, the next thing we're going to look at, so this is our experiment with adding strings. The next experiment we're going to look at with multiplying strings. So here I'm going to call them string 7 and string 8. So I have my, then string 8 is called name. So here we have 2 strings, string 7 and string 8, and then string 9 itself is going to be 3 times string 7 plus 2 times string 8. And what we're going to do is we're going to print that out to the screen. So we'll do string 9, close our quotations there, and then we'll print out string 9 the screen. So what you should see happen here, and I'll pull this up over here, is string 6, where we concatenate strings, adds them all together and smushes them. That's what this plus sign still does here. Notice when we multiply with strings, it just multiplies the string itself. So if you forgot how that works, you can multiply with strings. It looks a little funny, but all it does is it multiplies it, the word, 3 times and smushes it together. So make sure you have that knowledge down. My next slide here, you should be able to start making now educated guesses on what will happen when you use various types of print statements. So look through these. I'll click to them in just a second, but notice here we have a comma between 2 variable names that are strings. Think through what that's going to do. Notice here I concatenated strings. Think through what that's going to do. Here I multiplied a string, that's purple. Think through what it's going to do. Here I multiplied an integer. What's it going to do? And here I concatenated some things together with this space in between. Think through what that's going to do. So take a second, fill those out in your notes, and then from here I'll click in just a second so you can check your answers. So here, a couple of things to note. Now, this is not an underscore that would show up, but this is me reminding you that a comma puts a space between 2 strings. Adding of strings results in them being smushed together. Multiplying a string makes it repeat 3 times, but multiplying an integer, like we talked about on the previous slide, will actually produce the 3 times that integer. And then here, this concatenation with a space put in between does what a comma does because we're asking it to add a space in between. You should be able to predict output now for strings that involve addition as well as multiplication.